SpiceJet Flight SG-622, a Boeing 737, is about to take off for Delhi. It's positioned on runway 04 at Surat Airport in India on November 6, 2014. It then begins its takeoff roll in the late evening under good conditions. It accelerates to 50 knots, 60 knots, 70, and then just 350 meters after it began its takeoff roll, it now faces an unexpected obstacle in its path. A buffalo that had made its way on the runway. On that evening in November 2014, SpiceJet's Boeing 737-800 is scheduled to depart from Surat and fly to Delhi with 151 passengers and 6 crew members. Surat Airport, managed by the Airports Authority of India, reports excellent weather, 6 kilometers of visibility, calm winds, and 29 degrees of temperature. This aircraft had landed from Delhi as Flight SG-623 at 6:15 p.m. earlier and had no reported issues. After a quick turnaround, it was cleared for departure as Flight SG-622 to Delhi. At about 7 p.m., the aircraft departs the gate and then taxis to runway 04, not anticipating what is about to occur in a few minutes. 5 minutes later, the air traffic control authorizes the aircraft to take off, and so the pilots engage the takeoff thrust and the Boeing 737 starts to accelerate down the runway. 40 knots, 50 knots, 60, 70, and then at 78 knots and just 350 meters from the start of its takeoff roll, amidst the darkness, the pilot notices a brief movement. But before he can respond, a loud impact shakes the plane, as a buffalo that had entered onto the runway had struck the left engine. So the pilot immediately aborts the takeoff and gets the aircraft to stop on the runway. And so the pilots inform the air traffic control, and after confirming that there was no fire or irregular engine readings, they requested to return to the parking bay. A while later, the aircraft taxis to the parking area and an inspection crew is brought out. The initial inspection reveals significant damage to the left engine. The nose inlet cowl is dented at the bottom right position, and the fan cowl is also damaged. The thrust reverser had a puncture and 9 fan blades were chipped or bent. There was no fire luckily, and all 151 passengers and 6 crew members then disembarked the aircraft safely. But the main question here is, how had a buffalo managed to enter the runway? Shortly after this, the Ministry of Civil Aviation tasked the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau with a thorough inquiry. This inquiry was then launched, and a few months later in 2015, an official report was released. A link to the report is in the description if you want to take a more detailed read. What the report essentially states is that there were major lapses at Surat Airport that led to this situation. The main issue was a breached airport boundary wall. When teams went out to inspect this wall days after the incident had taken place, they identified gaps in the 12.5-kilometer perimeter. The chain linking fencing was compromised and had sections that were supported by wooden poles, and a 100-meter brick wall that was unstable. Gaps under the security gates were also found that could allow animals access to the airport's area. The operational area was covered with around 3 to 4 foot high vegetation, and this offered a hiding spot for wildlife. Also, nearby farms and water bodies attracted animals. In fact, just the day after this incident took place, another buffalo was spotted within the airport's perimeter. The Airports Authority of India requires daily perimeter checks of the airport, and this primarily includes checking that the airport's boundary wall is not compromised. But the record book showed that the last check was actually conducted on September 25th, which is more than a month before the day of the incident in November. On the day of the incident on November 6th, a runway inspection had been conducted at some point in the morning hours, but none was conducted before the flight's 7 p.m. departure. There has been an official mandate from the Airports Authority that requires inspections must be done at a higher frequency, usually requiring at least 4 inspections to be undertaken in a day, usually at dawn, then morning, afternoon, and then 1 at dusk. In fact, the inspection at dusk is also required to be more detailed and thorough and should cover the full length of the runway. The investigation also cited a human factor, known as the night blind spot. In low light conditions, there is a 5 to 10 degree area in the center of our visual field that becomes less sensitive to detecting objects. This is because the central retina has cone cells that are less effective in dim light, whereas the rod cells that are more sensitive to light are located on the periphery of the eye. As a result, in night conditions, this delays the detection of objects that are directly ahead. This night blind spot must have prevented the pilots from spotting the buffalo sooner. But had they noticed it sooner, there is not much that could have been done anyways at that speed to save the animal and the aircraft.